All right. Um, let's start off. Susan, would you mind giving us an update on the middle school?
Yeah, I would love to. We are in the middle of our Game On project, which is really exciting. It's one of the projects that we have captured on a 3-year rotation. So it's always really exciting to revisit a project and be able to, continue the things that worked really well and then figure out what didn't work well. I think right now, the biggest thing that we're super excited for is Haunted Forest, because that is always an amazing event at Greenspire. Other than that, we've been enjoying the warm weather and the bees are flourishing at Greenspire. So
Great, thank you. Just a brief update there. We do have the sign up online for 3 different sessions where people can assist. And I'm really, really pleased to see we have so many people able to assist with this event. So that's awesome. Are there any questions for Susan? All right, excellent. Erica, you're up. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Marco. At the high school, we have a half day this Friday for the students because our staff is doing professional learning in the afternoon. We now have an official student council. We meet every week on Wednesday mornings at 9 o'clock and sometimes even Friday mornings too. They've been very busy. They're helping out with the Haunted Forest event at the middle school. They're also planning the first Greenspire High School winter formal dance on December 11th. And they actually just met this morning. We have our new school furniture is arriving this Thursday and Friday. So that's going to be interesting since we'll have the students in the building, but we're figuring it out. And our new classroom signs have been ordered. That's a Pizza is started and it'll continue every Thursday. And that's pretty much it. Was pretty uneventful today. So that's us. Any questions for me?
I was just going to say uneventful sounds delightful.
It was rare, but awesome because I got some work done, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am curious. Do you desire help putting furniture together Thursday and Friday?
Good question. No, because it's actually coming assembled.
What?
I know. Yes. I know. Yeah, we're working with a school.
If that changes for some reason.
What was that?
If that changes for some reason, I am around.
All right. Thanks, Kat. I appreciate it.
I have heard of devious plans where they disassemble it before they walk in the door, small doorways. Okay. I am actually going to, I don't know if anyone has looked at this agenda. I'm flipping things because I don't really follow agendas well. I want to slide into logistics a little bit. There are a few pieces that we have talked about and I would like to make sure it stays in the top of our minds. Haunted Forest, as I mentioned, we do have a sign up and that seems to be going very, very well. Actually, I believe several of us on the call will be there at one time or another, so that's amazing. I wanted to talk about yearbooks. Last year, this was dropped on Kat, and it was a whole lot for one person, particularly who had never seen it before. So this year, I wanted to start talking about it now before events start happening to make sure we get the photos. And I'm looking for someone to work with Kat, assist Kat, and learn the ropes. As we do that, Kat is planning to actually kind of document the process of working on the yearbook. So that way we have information going forward and it's not all ever in one person's head. Kat, do you have anything to say on yearbook, where we should start?
Actually, I do. I know that's shocking for any of you that know me. I am thinking in terms of, and Bridget's already got her hand up. Sorry, I didn't even check over you, Bridget. But my thought is I'd really love to get a sit down with the high school admin and with the middle school admin. It can be together, it can be separately, it can be Zoom, but just to tick off, okay, what are the bullet points you want in there? PBL, specific subjects, not even subjects, that sounds a little too, we want to have as page spreads besides the student photos. And having that now, knowing when things are going to happen, that means that we can then fill in those pages and we can actually make the skeleton of the book now and then know, okay, X many pages are going to be for this, X many pages are going to be for this, and then just slide those photos right in. And that will save so much time having that skeleton worked out beforehand with y'all.
Yes, Bridget.
So.
I'm more than happy to help with the yearbook. Are we doing 2 separate yearbooks for the middle school and the high school, or is it just going to be one, or they're separate? Okay.
They'd be separate.
So we need somebody from the high school to help out, and then somebody at the middle school to help with Kat, or
Yes, you.
Well, that said,
Yes.
I mean, I still have a kiddo at the middle school, so I'm kind of both places. So I feel
okay.
with the staff, because that's a very important component of this, and that communication getting a lot better this year and clear, but just having all of that nailed down before we go to winter break. And having all that nailed down before winter break means that we will be ready to rock and roll, because the beginning of March is when we have to actually send it to press. And so knowing and giving ourselves a deadline of like, well,
Yeah, you're coming in and out, just so you know. You're gone.
I will, oh, hey, oh, there you are. Hey, Kat. Just so you know, once you meet with high school admin, you'll know, but we're working better at having like a single dumping ground for pictures. So that should help. And then I know just being in the background, one thing that has been a struggle is just like spelling names correctly for students. So I wonder, with that conversation with admin, both at the high school and the middle school, if you could have access to the student list, the general one, and then you'll have all the correct spellings.
Can you hear me okay? Am I back? Yes, that would be amazing, incredibly helpful. And then the actual put together proof would then be sent to both the high school admin and the middle school admin for them to write all over it. And honestly, it worked really well for them to write all over the physical paper and hand it to my kid. And then they just were like, Mom, this is yours. And I was able to go through and make changes on spellings, or, oh, the student isn't here anymore, and able to make sure that happened really fast.
Excellent. I don't know if anybody caught it in the chat. This is semi-connected. Tomorrow is picture day at the middle school. Susan put that out there. I want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. I didn't see anything from the high school. I'm assuming it is not the same day, since I haven't heard about it. Okay.
Correct. The high school is the 21st, Thursday, the 21st.
Excellent. Okay.
And also, Kat, if I could make a comment, once we have our technology at the high school, our digital arts and tech lab is going to be pretty well equipped with really anything that one would need. We will have plenty of digital cameras and software editing. So I don't know if this puts a wrench in your plan, but it may behoove us to partner up with those classes to do this. But let's wait until I actually have a lab and then we can go from there.
The company that we used in the past has a template that we pretty much slide things into. But I am not opposed to any and all involvement of any and all of the people in any and all of the schools. Like, that's really exciting to me, and I think kind of what we're all about anyway. So I will not feel usurped in any way. Please say yes, give us this piece.
Yes, we have in the past had the idea that having a yearbook type class or credit would be lovely. Getting that to happen, of course, has been complicated, but it would be really delightful if the students are able to take some of that on as learning material, not just us offloading it to someone else. But there's actually a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with that. All right, is there anything else on yearbook? Okay, great. I am going to briefly mention the PTO. In the past, I have looked this up, and it appears to be the challenge of going through the paperwork, creating a company of some sort, getting the nonprofit designation as the starting point. Stephanie actually had the chance to look into that a little bit, and she found some information that conflicts with what I have. So we had tentatively spoken about getting together to talk a little bit and find out what truth is. Just something still in the back of our minds, but if there is a way that we can step into that, following the rules and bypassing some of the complexity up front, that would be really, really delightful. This is an area that I would love to have a volunteer that is excited about. If you know, we're all excited about interesting things. My wife likes workflows. So if anyone is interested and excited about this, please let me know. And let's see, I'm not going to put anything in my notes there for the moment. Donations. Are you able to speak to that? I'm sorry, I'm staring at your picture. You're muted.
Yeah, no, I am absolutely. So when we talked at the last SSC meeting, we talked a little bit about some staff appreciation, and a couple of other parents were also delivering things to both the high school and to the middle school with no rhyme or reason. And so a parent who is a member of a pretty vibrant PTO at a different school, she contacted me and said, you know, is there a Google Doc or something that we can put together so that if I'm taking things over, but somebody's already dropped something off, then I would know if they're there. And so she and I talked a little bit about trying to put a Google Doc together, and neither of us are familiar with that. And so the Sign Up Genius came out through the Haunted Forest, and I threw a quick one together, and we had several parents who have already signed up to bring things. And then there was another Facebook post on the SSC page that just talked about some of these donations that had been sort of dropped off randomly. And if anybody was interested in helping, to comment below. And as a result of both of those, we have about 10 families that have donated either goods or money. And as a result, I talked to Sarah and to Tori, and we have enough money to buy both the middle school and the high school lunch for their work day on Friday. And they both have chosen to have Spanglish as their options. And those gift certificates will be emailed to them when Spanglish opens tomorrow.
We appreciate you all so much. The donations that have been pouring in are just amazing. The constant flow of coffee and tea. We're good on tea for a little bit in case somebody puts that in sign up, but just the snacks, everything. I mean, I really wish you could see the smiles on teachers' faces when they run over to where they're held and just like grab things. And it just really is incredible. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you too. Kat?
Yep. One that just a little tag along with that is regarding the coffee aspect of that. I actually have a wholesale account with Higher Grounds. So anytime anybody wants to go that route, I'm happy to be the funnel for that, because it does save some money and gets a whole lot more coffee for the staff, which I know is important.
All right.
I had a pot by myself before 7:30 today, so it goes quickly. I was at school really early today, so it's much appreciated.
All right. That makes me so happy. I am so glad that that's happening, and I am really, really grateful that we have some more volunteers this year that are just really stepping up. Thank you. I think that's all I had for logistics. I guess I'm just going to open up the floor if anyone has questions or commentary. I'm really happy to speak about whatever, and then I can blather about security. Yes.
Regarding the developing a 501c3 PTO, so the next step is you and Stephanie are going to meet and then talk about the differences of, I guess, the information you've received. I am happy to help, and I also teach a nonprofit leadership course. And so my students could even help. So in case you want to, collaborate with them.
Taking notes of this, and I will be delighted to leverage your expertise gratefully.
And my conflicting information was Google PTO. So I have no expertise in this arena whatsoever. It was a quick Google search to try and, as people were Venmoing me money, I was like, is there a bank account? Sorry, the dog is barking.
Yeah, well, I think the beautiful part of this is we're going to be able to sit down and talk and find out what's real and what's not real, and we'll come out with some real solid actual information to go forward. So I appreciate having multiple persons with that putting effort in to have conversations about this. So excellent. All right. Is there anything else before I start talking about security? Go ahead, Kat.
I am curious, with the Erica that you have been dealing with this, but with the high school pickup line and the cars trying to go both ways on the one side of the road, what's going on with that? There was almost a collision that I saw today, and I'm a little concerned.
Yes, the car line. The car line. So it's a multifaceted problem that we're attempting to solve. And it's hard because it's a collaboration between Greenspire and NMC. And so that involves just a lot of approvals for a lot of different pieces of this. So we started with an approval to just use the circle car line. And then it completely clogged Dendrinos out onto Cass. And apparently there was one day that an emergency vehicle needed to get in and it wasn't able to. So at that point, we were troubleshooting, and they determined that, yes, we could now use the parking lot in addition to the car line in order to alleviate that backlog. But now what is happening is people are kind of bypassing the car line to get to the parking lot, and then people are exiting. So my next step is to talk to NMC because they actually met last week to come up with an alternative car line that is a bigger circle. The only problem is that would mean that the other university center tenants wouldn't be able to park in that part of the lot. So we're working on it. And then there was also an idea today, actually one of our students had this idea to, there's a little hill in the back of the north lot, maybe just to plow that and make a second entrance to the North University Center lot. So that way we have kind of an entrance and an exit on Dendrinos. Yeah, so for now, it's going to be near collisions, I think, for a little while until I can get through some of this red tape.
So
Not
work
the
in
best
progress.
answer, I know. What?
Work in progress. That's not a bad answer because that means that it's not stagnant.
Actually, one thing I would like to put out there, kind of on the topic of struggling to be moving forward. I know some of the hassles that are occurring because of furniture not being delivered yet, technology not being delivered yet. For all of the parents on the call, our staff is really working double time trying to A, educate our children, but then B, manage a school that's not yet assembled and has all the money but no access to any of the money. I'm willing to bet there are a lot of tears behind the scenes. So I just wanted to let all of the staff know how much we appreciate all the extra you're doing. It's above and beyond, and we are grateful.
Thank you, Marco. That's appreciated very much.
Yeah, you folks are awesome. All right, online security and safety. This is actually a topic I had at the beginning of last year as well. And actually, I don't know if anybody but Kat knows this. We decided a year or two back that we wanted to have a topic for each meeting in order to try and help people have a reason to come. I actually really find interacting with the staff and talking about things we can do for the school is the most essential bits, but this gives us a reason to meet. And I attempt to have it kind of correlate with what's going on. I say it's actually Kat and I trade off. But internet security is kind of my thing. I write software when I'm not doing everything else. So it's a great topic for us to discuss. Our students are online way more often than any of us ever were, probably combined. And security is important for a lot of different reasons. So before I start actually talking about that, does anyone have any questions that have come about your home network or what your student is accessing or challenges that have come up? Because it might be a little more entertaining if we can discuss this in context of real things that we've experienced.
You know, it's interesting. So my oldest kid is 18 now, so he sort of gets to he's an adult, he can make his own decisions. And he was always super involved with his technology and whatever kind of content that he was accessing. And now I have a middle schooler, and as a middle kid, he gets a little bit less attention. And so I got a Bark app that supposedly will let me know if he does anything naughty or inappropriate. Well, it would only alert me when he follows somebody who corrects people's grammar, but it's called Murder by Words or something like that. So every time he looks at this YouTuber, I get an alert that there's violence because it's murder by words. So I ended up canceling Bark, and because it didn't make sense, like some of the other stuff that was coming up was more of a dinner table conversation about what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And I found that those colanders or those safety nets aren't really reasonable or something. I'm not sure what the word is, but do you see what I mean?
Yeah, they are absolutely not perfect. And I think as we're getting into this, it's important to think about what those do. Basically, there is a list of keywords and ideas that are gathered over time to define what is safe and what is not safe. A really classic example, I mean, actually what you just gave is a great example, but a classic example that made the news way back when was there was a company called NetNanny, and it was specifically for this purpose. It helps you monitor what's going on your computer to make sure that things don't happen you don't want to. And the dilemma came up is that some schools purchase blanket licenses to cover all of their computers. It's a great thing to make sure all of our systems are safe, and there's all sorts of things that we can tout on that front. The dilemma was that they were unable to search things in regards to breast exams, health. There were issues with the body that people needed to study for classes, but they were then limited because things about the body are categorized under pornography. So I think part of the thing that is interesting with these is which company has the best filters and how smart are they? That is a very, very difficult thing. We have it's called The Circle. It's by Disney. Overall, I'm very, very happy with it. It allows us to identify child A is able to do this, this, and this. They cannot do those three things. Like we can say YouTube, yes, Vimeo, no. We could be specific to websites or apps. You can also identify in overall teen settings, preteen settings, child, adult, which have some pre-built filters for all of those. But then there's also the ability to set timers. You can only access this for 1 hour in the day. So there's a lot that's really, really good. One of the things I've seen that are incorrect or that is not good is the way the internet works. And this actually beautifully feeds into all sorts of stuff I want to talk about. But the way the internet works is you have one website that you go to. That website can get a lot of funding by having advertisements to other websites. So what happens when you access your YouTube app, it starts pulling in ads for different places. The videos are stored in certain places. So one visit to the YouTube app actually pulls up in Circle as 45 different websites that have actually been hit, because that advertisement comes from this place, the next advertisement comes from another place. And depending on how those advertisements are run through, your student can actually be blocked from access because something was redirected twice, and that could be spam. So it's a real challenge that comes in with what I would otherwise see as a great product, but it has to do with the complexities of the internet. To be honest, we have actually continued to use it even with some of those complexities, because we set a bedtime of 9 o'clock or whatever it is. At 9 o'clock, their internet is completely cut out on every device that's associated with that child. So if they wish to continue forward with whatever it was they were doing, they have to come down and have a conversation. So while I rarely actually say 9 is it, you're done, it actually forces them to get out of their zone and come down and have a conversation, interact in person. So for me, it has been worth it for that type of thing. But that kind of leads us into how things work on the internet, how funding works on the internet, and why tracking is such an interesting concept that keeps coming up as we talk. I'm going to pull out an example I know you've all experienced, but actually it has gotten so much creepier now. Have you ever had a conversation in a car? No one was on the internet, no one was searching anything, and the moment you get home, the first ad you get is for the thing you were discussing in the car? So there is this, it's actually unbelievably cool technology. Like, I have to totally admit that. But what it does is, if you have the Amazon, oh goodness, Alexa, if you have the Google Now or Siri on your Apple, and I'm sure I just animated everyone's devices by saying those names. What they do when they are enabled is they listen all the time. And the idea is they're listening for those key words so it knows to act. However, what people are finding as they're doing a little more research and monitoring the activity of these devices is that they're communicating with the internet. And part of that is because these human voices that come through, they're not all stored in the device because there's just so much data. They have to communicate with the internet to have access to what they need. Some of the downfall is words that are spoken are clipped and sent out. This data is anonymous. They have no idea who you are individually, the way these are designed. They could assemble that info, but it is not designed to have any idea who you are. But it ties to your phone and the address on your phone. There's a thing called an IP address. If those of you who don't know, it's somewhat like a telephone number, but it's on your different devices. It tracks your IP address and things that you have researched, words that have been contrasted, things you have seen. Actually, even if you're scrolling on Facebook, if your eye was caught by a video and you stop and look at it for a while, it's actually tracking that something caught your attention and you stared at it for a while before you scrolled away. All of this data is then compiled and put into this huge marketing engine. And so the non-scary part of it is it's collecting data anonymously, assembling a better marketing experience for you. This is not actually for you. And it brings up a really good point of, if a service is free, you are actually the product. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind. If you are not paying for it, you're being sold to advertisements. But the way these things work is the anonymous bits of information, they're stored on your computer in cookies, they're stored in your browser, and they're stored on servers elsewhere. I actually know all of this happens, and I'm rarely intimidating. I rarely find it intimidating because I know what the technology is really doing, and I know that it's not tying me to these sales or whatever. But the biggest dilemma with, it's actually a whole industry called big data. When you have absurd amounts of data available, people will find ways to use it. An example, there were cameras installed in the Golden Gate Bridge to track and make sure that people were paying tolls or something very specific like that. I don't even know if there are tolls in the Golden Gate Bridge, but I believe it was something like that that was the purpose. And as these were installed, the intention was specific to, this will only ever get a car's license plate, tying it to a potential broken law or a ticket wasn't paid. At some point, an attorney had the idea that that would actually be a great idea to help identify if the alibi of his the defendant was valid. So he subpoenaed that information and found out that the husband of his, or ex-husband of his client, was not actually in town at the time he said that he was. And that won him the case. So this data has been collected on a large scale for a very different purpose, but it was leveraged for something else. It is now very, very common for lawyers in the San Francisco area to leverage that data. So this is where it starts to get me a little bit concerned. And I know that we have some really great information out there about the Internet of Things, cell phones, technology. Where that gets really interesting is your cell phone has probably 16 microchips in it. It traces location, latitude. It has a gyroscope to identify the angle you're standing at. You can actually, it can identify very specifically where you are standing at any given moment. By default, if you take a photograph on your phone, it actually will geocode that image so that it can be pinpointed where that image was taken from, including directional positioning. All of the information is part of that photo by default. So if you have a child who's into selfies, that's fine, that's cool. There are settings that we can disable for this, but basically every time they take a photo and share it on the internet, they're not only identifying what their new outfit is, they're also identifying where in their house they're standing, which you can very quickly get an address, but also what the room that they're standing in looks like. You can actually reconstruct a person's home visually from looking at images that exist online. And one thing that really tripped me up is like Roombas, those automatic vacuums that dance around the room. Those actually are encoded with GPS units as well. The idea is they identify positioning within the house, so the Roomba itself can actually get smarter and learn to more efficiently clean your space. But this also means that it is building a clear floor plan of your home and what floor plan exists on which floor. So if you have a Roomba and a teenager who's taking selfies, it is essentially, you've given someone the ability to completely reconstruct a 3D version of your home. So that's like the fear part. That's how bad it could be. I don't know anybody who's doing this type of construction. I want to make sure that we're all aware of what we are really giving up when we have these technologies in place. It always seems like I'm trying to make everyone scared, and that's not my intention. I just want to make sure I'm very clear on what's true. Kat is texting me something. Kat, is this something you want to discuss in the meeting? I'm dyslexic and I can't read while I'm doing something else.
Marco, can I just
That was what?
real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think just so you guys know, I have a 7th grader at Greenspire as well. I think for myself, you know, I'm pretty tech savvy. I'm pretty aware of how connected everything is. I think for myself, my concerns go more towards the wraparounds for kids. So Stephanie, for example, like we have Guardian, which is another parent app that you can have on the phone. I really like it. Kind of as Marco was explaining, there are certain things that are great about it, and then there are certain things that can be too restrictive about it. This one operates off of single Wi-Fi settings, so you can send commands to your child's phone at any point, doesn't matter where you're at, but in order to refresh or reload certain things, everybody's got to be on the same Wi-Fi, which is kind of a restriction. Anyway, regardless, some of my things are when kids do the workarounds, when they hide things, when they, it's for me, I think those are the scariest things. And my son and I have a pretty open relationship. He knows I can go into his phone all the time. He recently just lost his phone because he said some unkind words with one of his friends, and I saw it. He didn't delete it, which was great of him. I would have seen it anyway, but I think kids yearn for that oversight at the end of the day. I really do. Most kids, not all, but I think for me, that's the most terrifying thing as a parent, is that we can put in protections, we can have conversations, we can monitor, and because technology is so large and it's so comprehensive and it's so intricate, that there are so many ways that kids can still access things that we don't necessarily want them to. And I think for me, something that would be important for me as a parent at Greenspire, and I think we did we do it last year or the year before, but including the children in those conversations of internet safety and social safety and friend group safety, bullying, things like that. Because what I find is when a parent says it, it's not as it doesn't stick, sometimes it's nagging, oh, you're just putting restrictions on my life. But it was interesting because after Dylan got his phone taken away, he actually went to Chris for high school. It's for high school, it's Chris is the science teacher at the middle school, if you don't know. But he actually went to Chris and Kelly, the social studies teacher, the next day. And he said, this is what happened. This is what I'm struggling with. What do you recommend doing? Like, he didn't want to hear from me. He was in a pickle. He was struggling with his peer group. There were things going on, and he actually reached out to trusted adults, which was phenomenal to me. But not all kids have those resources or feel those connections. So I think for me, that is kind of what, as a middle school parent, high school parent, like I would love to really dive into and include the children, the kids, the teens, the young adults in that conversation. So it's not coming from the top down, it's learning together about what it is we're using. It's a lot like a car, car's not a right, it's a responsibility. Phones, computers, social media, it's not a right. You don't automatically get it. It's a responsibility. And how are we responsible with that?
That's brilliant. Thank you. I actually think that you really brought it to the heart of everything that needs to be said about this topic when it has to do with our children, our students. I don't know if your students are offended by being called children. I'll try to avoid it. The best thing that you can do with your students, if you want to make sure that there is security at its best, is make sure that you're doing everything you can to have a safe relationship with them so they can come to you. Acknowledge that mistakes will happen. I used to call it the porn triangle of death. You type in the word rectangle trying to find a box that you saw online or something like that, and somehow 3 steps down the line you're staring at stuff you don't want to see with clients around. So these mistakes happen, and if you have the ability to allow your child to feel safe to come to you, it is a much, much better space to be. When I'm looking at security online, I'm actually much less concerned about movie violence. I'm much less concerned about nudity. The things I'm actually most concerned about is there are things that you will see that you can never unsee. I have a very specific moment in my mind for myself. I actually saw online a live footage video of a man being beheaded. And that is something that I can never unsee. So when I really start digging into internet security, it comes down to these rules are in place because there are some things you can't unsee. So it's important to discuss what those rules are, whether or not your child can hear you directly. Maybe we should set up a class to do that. Yes, Kat.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. I actually had a situation with one of my kiddos that they did see something they didn't mean to and came to me and said, I need you to take away my access to this. And like, that was the biggest parent win ever for me, by the way, which they were just distraught and sobbing, but said, I need you to limit my access because I don't ever want, I can't unsee. And they weren't even searching for it. It was a mistake type of situation. But we've been very, very open in our house about talking about all of the things. I'm pretty forward when it comes to things with my kids. And I know everybody does things their own, you know, what works for their family unit. But just being able to, I don't know, the fact that apparently we've been open enough and forward enough with, you know, there are inappropriate things on what, well, these are some of the inappropriate things. This is the why I don't want you to do this, not just because I said so.
Mhm.
Because it's not an answer. It's something one of my friends used to use with her kids. And they were like, Mom, because it's not an answer. And she's like, you know what, you're right. And so they sat down and they talked about stuff. But sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's like, you know, everything's falling apart and the car is broken down and you're trying to make it out the door. And oh my God, you know, your kid's looking at something that they're not supposed to, you found out about it and like you lose your, you know, but the biggest thing I've been able to do is that they will talk to me, but say like owning that I'm making mistakes, I think is probably one of the things that has made it easy for them to come to me is saying, wow, that was totally out of line. I shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. That was not treating you like a human as a whole person. So like that was one of the biggest things that has made it easier for my kiddos to talk to me was when I'm totally willing to own when I have completely messed up, regardless of what it's about, because it all kind of feeds into everything else. So there's.
Thank you. We're getting closer to 8. So what I would like to put forward in these last few minutes are things that you can do. If your child has social media accounts, every single one of them, there are pretty clear steps that you can find on how you can identify who has access to what posts they have. That's a first big step. Go through and make sure that only their friend groups can see it, people they have friended. Maybe talk together and come up with some rules as a team on what hurdles someone has to cross to be accepted as a friend. Like what is the price of admission for your feed? And then beyond that, we talk about the why. Because once you have connected someone in as a friend, they have access to stuff about you that's personal. And as I mentioned before, going off into like how it can become scary, posting a photo online can give information about who you are. Once again, that's less of a concern for me, but where I am concerned for the students on the picture front is once it hits the internet, it's there forever. It cannot be deleted. So that's something really important to think about because we have a generation of students who are growing up with access to the internet that we didn't even consider until we were in our 20s. So we had some responsibility. It would be quite a shame in 15 years to be turned down for a job because of a photo you posted of a joke you played on someone that ended up not being funny. Unfortunately, that happens. I know for a while there were some companies who were insisting on your Facebook username and password before you could apply. So like it can affect you in much larger ways. So privacy settings, communicate with your child, try and reinforce a level of safety. And after that, of course, I'm drawing a complete blank with this piece. This is important. All right, it's going to come to me as I'm trying to go to bed. Make sure you're communicating with your student. Yes, Kat.
Yeah, you're muted.
Because, yeah, at least I introduced my cat. In terms of social media, is making those decisions of when to help your kiddo venture into social media or not, and how to kind of navigate that, because we've had a pretty strong line on the not, and the campaign with one of our kiddos has been very strong to have more access, and the other one just couldn't care less. So like navigating those conversations is something I would really love more information or ideas on, of no, this really is.
I think one thing we could do is we could come up with a few questions, like challenges that we're experiencing, conversations we'd like to have. And then maybe we as a team here could kind of think tank it a little bit and come up with ways we could approach it. Maybe have an initial conversation and then we all get back together inviting our students. So it's not I'm talking just to my kids. I remembered that piece that I wanted to make sure to get in there. It is very important to remember, and this is psychology, it's not people being mean. People will say things on the internet they would never consider saying in person. This concept of anonymity allows people to be not necessarily their best selves. I think that's something worth discussing with your kids. So kind of dabbled and touched on a little bit of everything. Are there any questions on any of that? I really appreciate all the contributions. That makes these conversations so much better.
Marco, real quick, I know one thing that I do, if Dylan, like with Discord, and then we dabbled with Instagram a little bit, decided not to go down that road, but if he has access to kind of those social media things, I have it on my phone. So I have his account on my phone, and that just eliminates whatever loopholes there are in parent protection apps.
Yeah.
And I have found that that's helpful. And, one kind of circling back to what you said, if something comes up where I'm monitoring and I see something, it's not an immediate disciplinary action. Like there's discipline, but the conversation is the more important piece in our family. Sitting down, talking about why did we do this? Why is this something we can't do? What do we do better? There's still the consequence, but I find that conversation piece is the most helpful.
I would definitely agree with that. I also think this has actually been hard for me because I've seen it from both sides. Language changes as we grow. So when you're having a discussion with your child, there are some things that are clearly just inappropriate. There are some things that seem very off. And then you could ask that question like, what am I missing here? This seems really out of sorts. And then they might identify, oh, there was this inside joke that happened here and it kind of tumbled into this and it was funny. Generally, if you're there, it's still probably not great, but it's really, really interesting to get that extra bit of information. Why did you find that funny? So
Something we found very, very helpful is that the computer that our is not in the room. It's somewhere that we're around. And so we can, and sometimes they'll be like, can you just bring it down a notch? Because they're going, what? Louder. But just that piece means that they are thinking about, or like, dude, my parents can hear you because you're so loud through my headphones, has been uttered before. So they're aware that we're there.
Bridget?
I'm just wondering if anybody has had, or how if anybody's had any issues of like like pushback from your child, your student, and might come back with, well, why don't you trust me? It's the big trust issue. Like, that's something that's been an issue in our house. And so I'm just curious if anybody else has other experiences or suggestions of how you've handled that.
For us,
Yes,
it was
and yes.
it was a conversation not about, don't you trust me? And the answer is yes, but it's not you that I have lack of trust in that's causing this concern. There are a lot of things on the internet and people aren't always honest.
Even go a step farther and say these programs were designed to suck you in. They go look at all of the psychology of how they work. And so it was literally designed for your brain to addict you. So it's less about trust and more about learning being able to handle your own boundaries in a learning curve. And also, again, owning that I spend too much time on my phone and need to put it down. And you see me doing this, that's what that is.
We have a lot of conversations about just the developing mind. Sorry, Marco, but what I heard growing up all the time was, I trust you, I don't trust the people around you. Well, I'm making decisions on who's around me, so you don't trust me. That's just what my developing mind went to immediately.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so we do have that conversation, right? Like, there's a lot of things out there that are meant to trick you. They're trustworthy or not trustworthy, blah, 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 blah. But, we also have that conversation of you're 12 or you're 14 or you're 16, like your mind's still developing. It's still learning how to set boundaries. It's still learning how to handle boundaries. You can't do the research to write a paper. How do you think you have enough in your brain to just like to figure out what's safe and what's not safe when the adults are struggling just to do that? So that's another kind of angle we've taken in the house.
I think it's also really important to note that, ADHD is a symptom that appears, I'm hearing from people a lot more. And the ADHD brain feeds on the dopamine that you get from things constantly changing. And that's what social media does. It feeds that, not in a way that's actually helpful, but just enough to keep you going. And I know this because my mother-in-law, I had gotten her a Fitbit at one point. And one day she called me to tell me that she thought it wasn't working well because she had gotten a reward for 20,000 steps in a day. And she's like, I haven't walked that much. And after a little bit of research, I found that when she's flicking her phone, scrolling on Facebook, it's counting it as steps. So I just thought that was really interesting how she didn't realize the amount of effort she was putting into staring at the phone for however long that was. So I thought that was interesting.
Talk about a workaround.
All right, so it's a 7:59. I'm really grateful for all of you coming today and sharing. This is a topic I'd be really happy to touch on again. We maybe put together that think tank. I'd be really happy for if you have specific questions, I'm happy to do that, and maybe I can post some on the website. Does anyone have anything else before we shut down for the night? All right. Thank you all so much for coming. It was a great meeting.
Thanks,
have a great
Marco.
night.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Bye.